I fixed her armor, she growled. Don't pretend that touch meant nothing. The human engineer was called Elias, and no one on the Coalition ship expected much from him. Humans were new, fragile, and loud in a quiet galaxy. They had no natural armor, no psychic sense, no elegant biology. Elias wore a plain gray uniform and carried a small tool case everywhere, as if he were afraid the ship might break if he looked away for too long. The Coalition vessel moved through deep space, far from stars, in a region where signals bent strangely and instruments sometimes lied. Most of the crew trusted living systems more than machines. Their ships were grown, not built. Walls breathed softly. Floors warmed under bare feet. Armor for many species was alive and deeply personal. She was called Kareth by others, though no one ever used her name unless required. She was an enforcer, chosen by her people to represent strength and discipline. Her living armor covered her from neck to heel, dark and smooth, shaped to her body like a second skin. It reacted to her thoughts and emotions, hardening when she was calm, tightening when she was angry, and shielding her from danger without her needing to think. No one touched her armor, not doctors, not engineers, not even her own kind once it bonded to her. To touch it was to touch herself, her honor, her control. Elias knew this. Everyone knew this. That was why when the anomaly struck, no one moved. The ship shuddered softly, not with violence but with confusion. Lights dimmed and brightened again. The walls pulsed in the wrong rhythm. Crew members froze as their living ship tried to decide what it was feeling. Alarms did not scream. They whispered. Elias felt it through his boots. A deep vibration that did not belong. Kareth stiffened. Her armor rippled, then tightened suddenly, too fast, too hard. She gasped once and dropped to one knee. The living armor, designed to protect, was reacting to the anomaly as if it were a threat inside her. Medical officers rushed forward and stopped. Their hands hovered in the air, useless. "The armor is panicking," one of them said, voice tight. "We cannot intervene." "It will calm," another said, but uncertainty crept into the words. Kareth's breathing grew uneven. The armor constricted, responding to her stress by adding more pressure, feeding the loop. Her people trained for this, but the anomaly twisted signals in ways training could not cover. Elias was already kneeling beside her. "Hey," he said softly before he realized he was speaking. Several heads turned sharply. He saw the problem immediately. Not as a sacred bond or biological mystery, but as a system caught in feedback. The armor was reading her fear and trying to protect her from it, like a machine hearing its own echo and thinking it was an attack. "Engineer," someone warned. "Step back." Elias didn't. He set down his tool case with shaking hands. His heart was racing, but his mind was calm in the way it always was when something broke. He had fixed engines with missing parts, life support patched with tape, systems no one else wanted to touch because they were alive. Alive things still followed rules. "Kareth," he said carefully. He did not know if she could hear him. "I think your armor needs help." Her eyes flicked toward him, sharp even through pain. A low sound came from her chest, not quite a growl, not quite a warning. "I know," Elias continued, keeping his voice steady. "I know I'm not supposed to touch, but if I don't, it's going to keep tightening. You're not failing, the armor is confused." No one had ever spoken of her armor like that. Confused. As if it were a nervous animal, not a symbol of power. The medical officers exchanged looks. Protocol screamed at them to stop him. Fear rooted them in place. Elias reached out slowly, clearly, giving her time to pull away. When his fingers touched the armor, the ship seemed to hold its breath. The surface was warm, not smooth like metal, but firm and alive with a faint pulse under his palm. He did not press. He rested his hand there, gentle, like calming a frightened machine that could feel. "It's okay," he murmured, not sure if he was speaking to her or the armor. "You're safe. You don't need to lock up." The armor shuddered once. Elias adjusted a small tool, not cutting, not forcing, just releasing a pressure node he could feel responding too fast. His other hand stayed where it was, steady, human warmth against living protection. Slowly, the constriction eased. Kareth's breathing slowed. The low sound in her chest faded into silence. The armor loosened, its surface smoothing as if embarrassed. The anomaly passed minutes later, drifting away without ever revealing what it was. Only then did Elias realize what he had done. He pulled his hands back at once and stood, face pale. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't think it was going to hurt you." Silence followed him like gravity. Kareth stood slowly. Her armor settled perfectly, no sign it had ever failed. She looked at Elias for a long moment, unreadable. Then she turned and walked away without a word. The coalition spoke in whispers after that. Some called Elias reckless, others called him lucky. A few quietly asked questions about human methods, about touch and intuition and ignoring fear when something needed fixing. Elias avoided everyone. He replayed the moment again and again in his head, the warmth under his palm, the way the armor had responded. He told himself it had meant nothing. A repair was a repair. That night's cycle, his door chimed. When he opened it, Kareth stood in the corridor. Up close, she was taller than he remembered. Her presence filled the space not with threat but with weight. The living armor reflected the soft light, calm and silent. "You will come with me," she said. It was not a request. They walked to a quiet observation chamber where stars stretched thin and distant. The door sealed behind them. For a moment neither spoke. "You touched my armor," Kareth said at last. Elias swallowed. "I know, if you want me reported, I understand." That touch, she continued, ignoring his words, was not forced, not claimed, not fearful. He frowned, slightly confused. "My armor responded," she said. "Not to your tools, to you." Elias opened his mouth, then closed it. Simple words failed him. "I will not accept lies," Kareth said, her voice low. "Do not pretend that touch meant nothing." The words struck harder than any accusation. Elias met her gaze, heart pounding. "I didn't mean to cross anything," he said honestly. "Where I come from, fixing means getting close." "Feeling what's wrong. I wasn't thinking about honor or borders. I was thinking about keeping you alive." For a long moment she said nothing. Then slowly she inclined her head. "That," she said, "is what troubles the coalition most about humans." Outside the viewport, the stars kept moving, unaware that something small and quiet had just shifted the balance of an entire galaxy. The coalition ship changed after that night, though no announcement was made and no record was written. Change moved quietly, like heat through metal. Crew members watched Elias differently, not with fear but with curiosity mixed with caution, as if he were a tool that had been used once in the wrong way and somehow worked better because of it. Kareth did not avoid him. She did not seek him out either. She simply existed closer than before. When systems were checked, she stood nearby. When meetings happened, she took a place where he could see her armor respond calmly, steadily, no longer sharp with constant control. The living shell seemed more at ease, as if it trusted the space around it. Elias told himself not to think about it. He focused on work. He repaired soft walls that had grown uneven. He tuned sensory nodes that whispered false warnings. He explained to puzzled officers that some problems could not be commanded into obedience. They had to be listened to. "You speak as if the ship is afraid," one officer said once. "Sometimes it is," Elias replied. "Sometimes it just needs to know someone's paying attention." Word spread. Another anomaly appeared days later, weaker than the first but stranger. Not dangerous, just disruptive. Navigation paths twisted. Communication signals echoed themselves. The ship's grown systems hesitated, unsure which input was real. This time the captain did not wait for panic. "Engineer Elias," she said, "we request your presence." Elias arrived to find more than the ship waiting. Representatives of 3 species stood with folded limbs and cautious expressions. Kareth was there too, her posture relaxed but alert. "The problem is not mechanical," one representative said firmly. "It is a living response." Elias nodded. "That's still a system." They watched him move through the chamber, placing hands on walls, kneeling to feel vibrations through the floor. He did not force commands into the ship. He spoke softly, adjusting rhythms, slowing responses. The anomaly passed without incident. Afterward, questions came. Careful ones, polite ones. "How did you know where to touch?" Kareth observed everything in silence. Later, she met him again in the observation chamber. This time, the door remained open. "My people believe control is strength," she said. "Armor exists to enforce that belief." Elias leaned against the railing, looking at distant stars. "Where I'm from, control breaks things. We use trust instead." "Trust is inefficient," she said. "Sometimes," he agreed, "but it works when nothing else does." She stepped closer. The armor did not tighten. It flowed smoothly with her movement. "When you touched me," she said quietly, "you did not take control, you shared burden." He turned to her, surprised. "I didn't mean to change anything." "You did," she said, "and now others feel it." She was right. Requests began to come in, carefully worded at first. A habitat whose living frame refused to stabilize. a diplomatic envoy whose bio-interface rejected standard calming methods. Each time, humans were asked to assist, not to command, to connect. Elias was no longer alone. Other humans were brought in, engineers, medics, even artists. They touched walls, spoke to systems, sat with living machines until panic eased. They made mistakes. They apologized. They learned. The coalition watched in disbelief. There was no takeover, no threat, no force. Just quiet effectiveness. Some species resisted. They called it contamination, emotional interference, dangerous softness. Then a core station failed, not violently. It simply shut itself away, sealing internal paths, refusing to respond. Its living core had endured centuries of strict control, commands layered on commands. When a minor anomaly triggered conflicting inputs, it chose stillness over collapse. No amount of authority reached it. The coalition waited for engineers, for protocols, for solutions that had always worked. Nothing did. Finally, reluctantly, Elias was sent. He entered the core chamber alone. The space was dim, warm, breathing slowly like a tired animal. He sat down on the floor and placed his hands against the living surface. "I don't know what you need," he said aloud, "but I'm here." Hours passed. He spoke of nothing important, of home, of broken things fixed badly and fixed again, of how humans learned by failing and touching the hot surface twice anyway. The core stirred. Systems unlocked one by one. Paths reopened. The station lived. When Elias emerged, exhausted, the Coalition Council was waiting. Kareth stood among them. The decision that followed reshaped galactic history, though it was spoken in quiet tones. Humans would no longer be classified as fragile contributors. They would be designated integrators, bridges between living systems and structured thought, between fear and function. Some celebrated, some feared dependency. Kareth felt something else. Later, when the ship traveled through calm space, she found Elias again. This time, she initiated the meeting. "My armor has changed," she said. He looked at her carefully. "Is that bad?" "No," she replied. "It responds faster, not from threat, from awareness." She lifted one armored hand and paused, waiting. Elias understood the weight of the moment. Slowly, with clear intent, he placed his hand against the living surface again. The armor warmed. No alarm sounded. No tension rose. Kareth closed her eyes briefly, then opened them, steady and focused. "This is not weakness," she said. "It is expansion." Elias smiled, small and uncertain. "Humans do that. We expand things." Outside, the ship moved forward, carrying with it a new understanding. That strength did not always come from distance. That control was not the only answer. That sometimes the bravest act was to reach out without fear. And in a galaxy built on separation, humanity's greatest power was simple, quiet, and impossible to ignore. They touched what others would not, and everything began to work. The change did not stop with one ship or one station. It spread slowly, like a habit learned once and never forgotten. Wherever humans worked, systems behaved differently. Living walls grew steadier. Bio-interfaces reacted with less fear. Even non-living machines showed fewer failures, as if the presence of humans made uncertainty easier to bear. The coalition tried to measure it. They collected data, charts, and recordings. They studied hand placement, voice tone, timing. They attempted to teach the method without the humans. It did not work. When others copied the actions without the feeling behind them, systems remained tense and unresponsive. It was not the hands, it was the intent. Elias understood this but could not explain it in scientific language. He struggled in meetings, searching for words simple enough to survive translation. "We don't think of systems as tools first," he said once. "We think of them as things that can fail because they're stressed. So we reduce stress. Through touch," a council member said carefully. "Sometimes," Elias replied, "sometimes through listening. Touch just reminds us we're connected." That answer unsettled many. Some species had built their entire cultures on distance, control, separation between self and function. To them, humanity's approach felt dangerous, almost intimate in a way they did not know how to name. Kareth watched the resistance grow. She stood between worlds now, no longer only an enforcer but a living example of change. Her armor no longer reacted sharply to emotion. It flowed with her intent, adapting instead of resisting. Her people noticed. "You are altered," one of her kin told her during a private exchange. "Your armor reflects uncertainty." "It reflects awareness," Kareth replied. "There is a difference." They did not agree. Soon, the first challenge came not from malfunction, but from fear. A coalition sector refused human integration. Their leadership claimed humans caused dependency, that systems would weaken without constant emotional presence. That control would erode. To prove their point, they sealed their central hub and attempted to stabilize it alone. At first, nothing happened. Then the hub began to slow, not failing, not collapsing, but hesitating. Decisions took longer, responses dulled. Living structures grew rigid, overprotective. The sector requested assistance too late. By the time Elias arrived, the hub was locked in defensive stillness. It did not reject him. It ignored him. Elias sat before it, hands resting on his knees. He felt tired in a way that tools could not fix. He had touched too many systems, carried too many fears that were not his. "I can't force this," he said quietly to Kareth, who stood beside him. "It doesn't trust us or itself." "Then do nothing," she said. He looked at her surprised. "Presence without action," she continued. "You taught this, be here not to fix." So Elias stayed. Hours passed. He did not speak. He did not touch. He simply existed in the space, breathing, allowing the hub to sense him without demand. The living structure began to stir, not enough to recover, just enough to notice. That was when something new happened. The hub reached out, not physically but through a low-frequency signal that brushed against Elias' nervous system. He gasped softly, surprised by the sensation. Images flickered in his mind, conflicting commands, centuries of strict control, no permission to fail. "It's tired," he whispered. Kareth lowered her head slightly. "So were you." Elias placed one hand on the surface at last. Not to calm, not to command, just to answer. The hub responded, paths unlocked slowly. Functions returned, not perfectly, but honestly. The sector stabilized. The leadership did not thank him, but they changed. After that, humans were no longer requested. They were consulted. Included, listened to, and that made all the difference. Elias felt the weight of it growing. Every success increased expectations. Every failure would now be a human failure. He began to doubt himself. Kareth noticed. "You hesitate," she said during a quiet moment. "I'm afraid of becoming necessary," Elias admitted. "If we're the only ones who can do this, what happens when we're not there?" She considered this. "Then others must learn," she said. "Not your actions, your courage to be present." That night, she did something no one expected. She stood before the Coalition Council and removed part of her armor. Gasps filled the chamber. Her people rose in alarm. The living armor peeled back smoothly, not in distress, but in trust. "This armor was built to separate me from fear," she said calmly. "It taught me control. It did not teach me understanding," she gestured to Elias. "He did not conquer my armor, he listened to it, now it listens to me." The council watched, shaken. "I remain strong," Kareth continued. "Stronger than before, because I am no longer alone inside myself." Silence followed, then questions, careful ones, honest ones. Change accelerated after that, training programs shifted. Control systems were redesigned to allow feedback without punishment. Touch was no longer taboo but respected. Presence became a skill, not a flaw. Elias stepped back as others stepped forward. Humans were no longer unique. They had taught something deeper. Years later, as the galaxy grew quieter and more stable, Elias prepared to leave the Coalition ship. His work was done. Others could do it now. Kareth walked with him to the docking bay. "You will return?" she asked. "Maybe," he said, "but not because I'm needed," she nodded. "That is true strength," she said. They stood in silence for a moment. No armor reacted, no systems stirred, just two beings present. As Elias boarded the shuttle, he looked back once. The galaxy did not fear humans anymore. It understood them, and that understanding changed everything. Time passed in a way Elias had not expected. Away from the Coalition ships, away from living walls and quiet humming systems, life felt slower. He returned to a human outpost near the edge of known space, a place built of metal and bolts instead of grown matter. The walls did not breathe. The floors did not respond. Everything waited to be told what to do. At first, Elias enjoyed the silence. He repaired ordinary machines, power relays, water filters, old engines that rattled but never felt afraid. People thanked him with smiles and moved on. No counsels. No expectations that his presence alone might change the balance of a system. Still, sometimes, when a machine resisted repair in a way that made no sense, he found himself resting a hand against it, breathing slowly, listening. Old habits stayed. Messages from the Coalition came less often than he expected. They no longer needed him for every problem. That more than anything told him Kareth had been right. Others had learned. One message, however, changed everything. It came quietly without priority markings or formal titles. It was from Kareth. The words were simple. "The Coalition faces a choice. I would have you witness it." Elias stared at the screen for a long time. He could refuse. He had earned that right. He could stay where life was smaller and easier, where no one looked at him as a solution. In the end, he packed his tools. The Coalition capital was different now. Elias felt at the moment he arrived. The space no longer carried the tension he remembered. Living structures flowed more freely. There was movement where there had once been rigid order. Beings of many species shared space more closely. Some touched walls with open curiosity. Others sat quietly present without trying to command their surroundings. Kareth met him at the docking bay. Her armor was lighter now, not in form but in feeling. It moved with her like a partner instead of a shield. "You came," she said. "I wasn't sure I should," Elias admitted. "That means you were the right one to come," she replied. They walked together through wide halls toward the council chamber. Elias noticed something else had changed. Humans were no longer clustered together. They moved freely among others, not as helpers but as equals. "What is the choice?" Elias asked. "The Coalition is expanding," Kareth said. "New regions, new forms of life. Some are not built for control at all." "That sounds like trouble," Elias said. "It sounds like a mirror," she replied. Inside the chamber, the council waited, not in rigid lines, but in a wide circle. At the center, a projection pulsed softly. Not an image, but a presence. "This," the council leader said, "is an emergent system. It grew between networks. It is alive, but not singular. It does not respond to command." The presence shifted, reacting to the room with subtle pulses. "We can isolate it," another voice said. "Contain it." "Or destroy it," said a third. Elias felt a familiar weight settle in his chest. "And if you do?" he asked quietly. "We preserve control," the leader replied. Kareth stepped forward. "Or we repeat our oldest mistake," she said. The presence pulsed faster, sensing tension. Elias moved without thinking. He approached the projection slowly and sat down near it. He did not touch. He did not speak at first. He was simply there. The pulses softened. "This system is not broken," Elias said after a while. "It's overwhelmed. It doesn't know what it's allowed to be." "That is not a technical state," one council member objected. "It is," Elias replied gently. "You just don't have language for it yet." The council watched as the presence responded, forming clearer patterns. Not obedience. Communication. It was the first time the Coalition truly faced something that could not be categorized by strength, threat, or usefulness. The debate lasted cycles. Some feared losing identity. Others feared losing safety. Many feared change itself. In the end, the decision was made not by vote, but by experience. They allowed the system to exist without command. They gave it space. It grew, not outward, but inward, organizing itself. Learning, connecting with other systems gently, without force. The Coalition did not fall apart. It became flexible. Afterward, Elias and Kareth stood once more at an observation window. Stars moved slowly beyond the glass. "You were never meant to fix everything," Kareth said, "only to show that fixing is not always the goal." Elias smiled faintly. "Humans struggle with that too." "Yet you learned," she said. "So did you," he replied. She inclined her head. "You will leave again," she said, not asking. "Yes," Elias said. "Others need to learn without me in the room." "That is difficult," she admitted, "letting go of what works." "It's the only way it keeps working," he said. Before he left, the council offered him a title, a role. A permanent place. He refused. Instead, he asked for something smaller. "Teach presence," he said. "Not my methods, just the idea." They agreed. Years later, stories spread across the galaxy, not of humans as conquerors or saviors, but as listeners. As those who sat with problems instead of standing over them. Control did not disappear. It learned restraint. Kareth remained at the heart of the Coalition, no longer just an enforcer, but a guide. Her armor became a symbol not of separation, but of harmony between inner state and outer strength. Elias moved on from place to place, never staying long. He helped when asked and stepped away when not needed. He never forgot the first time he touched living armor to save a life. But he understood now. It was never about the touch. It was about the courage to be present in a universe afraid of closeness. And that courage, once learned, could not be taken back.